Welcome back once again. We have special coverage for you here at 7 Eyewitness News today. The Buffalo Bills have a brand new head coach. He is coach number 20 since the team started playing right here in Buffalo, New York. Joe B., our sports director, also Jeff Russo, my co-anchor, both down at the field house in Orchard Park today. Gentlemen, I heard the coach mention once, maybe twice, the phrase long term. I think a lot of fans might be wondering, what exactly is long term when it comes to the Buffalo Bills from this point forward, or is there any way to figure that out?
That's an interesting point, Keith, and welcome back here to One Bills Drive. That's a very interesting point because a lot of times head coaches, right, they don't have a chance to think long term because they're thinking short term, got to get victories, got to win right away. I think what he meant in terms of the long term today, and correct me if I'm wrong, is maybe just more of the planning, maybe more, a universal input in terms of being able to talk about what he thought about the 53-man roster and be heard in terms of the long-term planning. What did you take of that today?
Yeah, and the whole long-term aspect and coaching in general is not nearly where it should be. Because we're talking, I mean, the last two coaches have been here 2 years each. Now, the circumstances were a little different on both, but that's just the reality of the NFL. We've seen places that have fired their coach after 1 year. But I think what we're seeing here is, I think Terry and Kim Pegula want to commit to a guy like Sean McDermott because, with the type of work ethic they have, and they don't want to go through this process again. It doesn't seem like they're those type of people. So in terms of what he can do to build things long term, I mean, he has to have a plan in place. It's not going to happen overnight, I don't think. Whether it be at quarterback, whether it be on the defensive side of the ball, to find the pieces that he needs to be a successful team, that is critical to them. And they only have so many resources in each offseason. So that's why you need to take a long-term approach. See where you can maybe use a Band-Aid rather than stitching it up at certain spots. And then in other more important spots, like quarterback, you want to assure yourself in that spot more than anything. So I think that's kind of why he's talking about using a long-term perspective, which is the smart approach in all, because if you just continue to go on and be short-sighted, then that's not a recipe for success in the long term. So to me, I think that's the right approach, and I think that's one that they need to stick to.
When you talk about recipe for success, I think it's going to come a lot down to the relationship between ownership, between the general manager and Doug Whaley, and between the brand new head coach Sean McDermott today. You heard him sort of clarify a little bit. He will report directly to the owners and Terry Kim Pegula. Doug Whaley will report directly to the ownership in Terry and Kim Pegula, but they are all on this, as they said today, as a team. Today, Sean McDermott talked about that relationship and what the breakdown is going to be in the front office.
Doug has control of the 53. We've talked and going through the process with the Pegulas. I'm very comfortable with the situation. And I wouldn't take this job if I wasn't comfortable with the situation, and Terry and Kim made sure of that.
One thing he would not do was make a commitment to Tyrod Taylor as his quarterback, which is smart, right? Early in the process here, but you got to think. I mean, he takes this job in some ways with such uncertainty at the biggest position on the field. They sit down Tyrod Taylor at the end of the year. His status with this franchise is up in the air because of the big contract. He's got to kind of sort it out. But if it's not Tyrod Taylor as a new head coach, boy, that really hamstrings you in terms of going into your first year. What do you make of that? What do you make of the situation with Tyrod Taylor, and especially with McDermott, the way he talked about it today?
It's such a complex situation, Jeff, because you look at it, I mean, we just talked about short-term versus long-term perspective. What does Tyrod Taylor represent? He represents something that can help you get to the playoffs in the short term. But is he the guy that will be able to lead you to a Super Bowl at the end of the day? That's something that they have to consider. What do they do in the long term? Can they find that young, exciting, franchise-level quarterback? Because I think it's kind of obvious that Tyrod is a good player, but I don't know if he can ever get to that level per se. So to me, him and what they end up doing here, they have a very, very interesting decision, and he kind of has to rely on Doug Whaley. If Doug Whaley has control of the 53-man roster, then he has to say, all right, I need you to make a decision that is in the best interest for me as a head coach and for us as an organization. And that's the thing that kind of needs to change here at One Bills Drive. There can't be any more me personal interest stuff. It has to be all-encompassing. It has to be everyone on the same page, making the same decision. So that's what it has to come down to for Tyrod Taylor.
And what can the expectations really be, right? Not knowing who the quarterback is, if Tyrod Taylor is not your quarterback. A lot of questions about that today. Here's Sean McDermott talking about his quarterback situation.
Just visited with Tyrod for 5 minutes upstairs. We did talk on the phone yesterday, and I appreciate his willingness to reach out. And fine young man. I remember going against Tyrod a little bit in the preseason. I've watched him in crossover tape, so I know the skill set. I know what he brings to the table. But again, at this time, it is premature to expand any further than that. I'm going to go through and be diligent with this evaluation of the roster, along with Doug, and doing this the right way.
He may have to make that decision in a hurry, though. You say diligent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they've got decisions to make, and in a hurry here. I mean, just a couple weeks, maybe more than a couple weeks, but they have some decisions to make, talking short-term, long-term, and the real short-term about the quarterback situation.
Yeah, specifically, the hardline date that they need to make the decision is by March 11th. That's the third day of the new league year. That is when his new contract extension kicks in, and they will have to pay him a guaranteed amount of $30 million. Now, that's not the cap number, per se. It's still a respectable cap number. So if they wanted to keep him, I mean, they could do so, but it would also limit the amount of resources they have on the salary cap this coming year when they have a lot of free agents. So that is a legitimate decision they have to make, and it just all goes back to, is this a short-term perspective, or are you looking for the long haul, the big fix for this situation? Maybe Tyrod is a bridge guy. You keep him for the next 2 years when they have to do everything in their power, at least in my opinion, to find that long-term guy, because they really haven't tried to do so.
If it is not Tyrod Taylor, he can win you some games. Can he take you to the next level? You raised a very valid point there. If it is not Tyrod Taylor, I mean, what else is out there at this point? I mean, you know what I mean?
It's not pretty.
What would the expectations be if he's not your guy coming into this season for a brand new head coach? I mean, it's the biggest decision he's going to have to make.
Oh, yeah, and it will be a clear direction as to where this franchise is headed. If they decide to walk away from Tyrod Taylor, which is why this decision is the linchpin of the offseason. If they decide to walk away from Tyrod Taylor, then that is signaling, at least to me, that they want to rip this thing right down to the baseboards and just start over fresh, which might be the smartest play, to be perfectly honest with you. You have a brand new coach, a brand new mentality. I mean, we heard from him when he was asked about Tyrod Taylor. He wants to be meticulous in his decision making. I mean, he has a certain amount of time to do so, but to establish that culture, maybe he needs to get his type of players in the building. And you know, perhaps with the players they have on the roster and them getting a little bit up there in age, at least they're more talented ones, maybe this is the right time to hit the reset button.
I was gonna ask that question though too. If this is a complete rip down for this franchise, you start losing pieces, like a veteran guy on the defensive line. Kyle Williams probably doesn't want to be a part of a full rebuild, right? You're looking at guys like LaShawn McCoy had an outstanding season. He is at the prime. I mean, he's fantastic right now. Will he be the same player in 1 or 2 years? You know what I mean? There are a lot of pieces. You can go on and on and on about that. So, boy, I'll tell you what, there's going to be a lot involved in that decision moving forward.
And that might, with Kyle Williams in particular, he's one of the best players on their team. He has 1 year left on his contract. He's mulling retirement as it is. I would be willing to at least think that it might be tied to whether or not they bring back Tyrod Taylor, or if they actually address the quarterback position in a significant way, whether it be through free agency or through a trade. If they go into the season with just Cardale Jones, you'd have to think Kyle goes, I'm not doing this.
That's what I mean. I think there's a lot of players like that. So, boy, intrigue here for Sean McDermott right off the start, the new 20th head coach in Buffalo Bills franchise history. Keith?
All right, boys, we've been talking a lot about the business side of things here, the football issue, but there's also a personal issue. Stay right there. I have a question for you. But first, Coach McDermott is going to be moving here to Western New York with his wife, Jamie, and his children, Maddie, Gavin, and Kelly. They were here with him at the news conference today, and the kids say that they're excited to see snow, I guess. But, gentlemen, do we know, other than coming to Buffalo to actually play a football game, how much does he know about Buffalo and Western New York, and has he really ever been here before other than for work?
That's a very good question, Keith, and welcome back out here live to One Bills Drive. Very good question, Keith. He said this is his type of town, right? He said his family is excited to be here, excited to embrace the community, and the fans are ready to embrace him. But that's a very good question. He says this is his type of town. What does he know about Buffalo? What does he know, about that such? He says a Northeast kind of guy. William and Mary understands that. Philadelphia. What did you make of that today, Keith?
Well,
Joe.
Well, I think all in all, he's been here a couple of times. He at least has a cursory knowledge of what Buffalo's all about. I mean, he's been in the league now 18 years, so he understands what. I'm sure he's been here a time or two as to what the stadium is like, what everything is like. But I think it's going to take him really an amount of time to really understand what it's like here in Buffalo, what the type of atmosphere it is, how the fans operate, how he could be at a tops and he could just be mobbed by people. So this is a situation where he's going to have to get used to being in the limelight, because maybe here, because it's very much a fishbowl effect here, because everybody knows what the head coach looks like, whereas in other bigger cities people might be like, I think that guy is some football team or something like that. Yeah, he might be, but everyone knows what the head coach looks like, so that's something he has to adjust to. But in terms of the mentality, I think he'll fit right in with the people of Buffalo.
Seems to be. Yeah. And he said today this was his top job, right? Top job on the market. A, because of ownership. B, because of that fan base. He talked about the fans earlier today.
When you talk about a fan base, I've been up here and I've played here before, and I've seen those fans, capacity crowd hanging over that railing, screaming when we were trying to do something on the other sideline, and that's what I want to be a part of. That's what it's all about, and I look forward to creating and recreating that again at our stadium.
17 years without the playoffs. Sean McDermott saying today, I am hungry. I am ready to embrace this challenge, and it starts inside the building. Joe, where does he go from here? I mean, he comes out, he has the introductory news conference today. They're packing up right now. He walks with the owners down into One Bills Drive into the offices. Where does he go from here? I mean, he's got to get his family here, but where do you start?
He goes straight to a telephone and tries to get an offensive coordinator, because that's the biggest hire he has to make right now.
Exactly.
He's a defensive guy, and I think at least from what reports are saying, they have a defensive coordinator who used to be a head coach, so they have that in line. However, they do not have an offensive coordinator in place as of yet. I'm sure they have feelers out there, but that is very important, because he is not as well versed on that side of the ball. So for them, they have to decide who is that guy to lead the way in that respect, and really that's going to be his ball game. We saw it last time around with Rex Ryan. He gave total autonomy to Greg Roman and then to Anthony Lynn. Now it seems like Sean McDermott has to do the same, and that is the most important decision he has to make. That's what he's probably doing now.
How much say will the offensive coordinator have on if Tyrod Taylor will be the guy under center? That'll be interesting. Keith.
All right, one final thing, guys, quickly. With all the criticism lately in the last month or so about the team, the owners, the players, the coaches, the president, the general manager, what was the feeling there today amongst the management of this club? What did it feel like to you?
I think, Keith, a very good question. It's been a long time since they've been able to really celebrate all that much as a franchise. I think, once again, they are ready to get away from the past, get away from a disappointing 2 years under Rex Ryan, and hit the reset button. Move forward with a guy they believe, once again, can lead them to the promised land, can lead them back to the postseason. That's the big question mark. Can he do it? But I think the franchise was really, they said right at the beginning of the news conference today, we do not want to talk about the past. We want to talk about from this point forward under Sean McDermott, and we want to allow him to lay out the sort of the route to success. Your thoughts about that today? I think they're ready just to move forward.
Yeah,
they're not looking back. They're not looking back. Sean McDermott, take us to where we want to go.
It was certainly less blustery today.
Right.
I mean, Rex Ryan went up to that stage and said, is this thing on? Because it's about to be. And that was the soundbite we've heard for the past couple of years. So I think what they want to do and why they're so involved with Sean McDermott and what they see from him is the fact that it's very much a business-like approach. Everything that I know about Terry and Kim Pegula, that is their approach 100%. You know, family-oriented, business-like, and, you know, not really boasting about everything. You know, Rex Ryan was completely different in that respect. So I think with this, Sean McDermott, he's going to come in here. He's got a heck of a challenge in front of him. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he will have to bear the burden of this 17-year playoff drought. No matter if the Pegulas want to talk about the history of the immediate history of the franchise or not, he has to bear that burden, and he has to be the one to help bring them out of the doldrums of the playoff-less stretch.
They talked about the interview process here. They interviewed 4 candidates. Sean McDermott was the first one, the first interview. They said in the interview that he knocked their socks off, was meticulous, was ready to go, was the perfect guy for this job. Sean McDermott, the 20th head coach in Bills franchise history. He is the guy the team's looking to now try and snap the longest playoff drought in NFL history. That's going to wrap it up for us this afternoon. For Joe Buscaglia, I'm Jeff Russo down here at One Bills Drive. Let's send it back to Keith Bradford in the studio. Keith?
All right, good. Thanks, guys. Let's cross our fingers because here we go again.